starting with panel 2. This panel is redefining photography and exhibit space. The presenters in our next panel, Redefining Photography and Exhibit Space, have written and created work pertaining to new ideas in photography and the possibilities of landscape as exhibition space. First, Casey Winkleman will be presenting her paper, Materiality of Photography, which explores the evolutionary transition of analog to digital photography. She touches upon artist Walid Beshti's series of color photograms, which leads into the work of our next presenter. Leah Shirley will present 2 bodies of photographic work. The latest of is comprised of abstract color photograms from her series entitled Fractura. Next, Alexandra Leon will share her paper, Relentless Repetition, which deals with the authoritative role of serial photography and its relation to a recently seized photographic archive of a Californian serial killer. The final presenter will be Keisha Leek. Her paper, Inside Out, The Landscape as Exhibition Space, addresses reinventing the museum and creating artwork specific to the outdoors. Keisha explores methods of utilizing our environment as exhibition space, which often introduces indoor exhibition qualities in the landscape. Please welcome Casey Winkleman to the stage.
The evolution of photography has been characterized by constant changes within the field. The shift from dated to more advanced media has never been a smooth transition. However, it has always been inevitable. Though these technologies improve our lives and make them easier, there are always a handful of artists who are not only reluctant to embrace new technology, but they swear by what they are already accustomed to. When technologies emerge, there's never an immediate jump because the new process is foreign. And also, adopting these new technologies means accepting the fact that newer and better ones will soon be implemented. Some artists would argue that the computer mouse, as opposed to using your hands to manipulate an image, could remove them from the process. However, I wanted to focus on the practitioners who are making strides at connecting both old and new media in photography. In my paper, The Materiality of Photography, I was interested in analyzing the photographers and artists who are working with both analog and digital technologies, in order to better understand the nature of new digital materials. By bridging the differences between analog materials and the machinery necessary for the process, these artists will come to understand the relationship between image and material as they make the transition to newer and more advanced media. Every technological practice within photography has limits, and while new technologies seem to offer endless possibilities, especially with photography in its ability to perfectly replicate subject matter, the intrinsic threshold of digital photography will soon be realized with the passage of time as contemporary work develops. My paper was heavily focused on 2 artists who work intimately with the material aspects of both digital and analog processes of photography. However, their approaches are in stark contrast with one another. The first one I'll talk about is LA-based artist Walid Beshti. His sculptural photograms are a rejection of traditional conventions, which get to the essence of his process. Just in case some don't know, a photogram is an image made by exposing light from an enlarger onto a photosensitive sheet of paper. No camera is involved in the making of a photogram, so in a sense, the paper acts as its own negative. Beshti makes photograms in a very structured way. In his series of multi-sided pictures, he constructs a set of rules before he even steps foot into the darkroom. What he plans on before he goes through with the process is how many times he will fold the sheet of photosensitive paper, and the number of sides the object ends up with determines how the colors of additive and subtractive light will be assigned to each side of the paper. Another criteria for his process is after he has folded the paper, it must be able to stand up on its own below the enlarger. Therefore, when he is exposing the paper to light, it will not necessarily be hitting the surface evenly. So, after following through with what Beshti refers to as dumb labor, or the mindless job of carrying out the scientifically calculated photogram making process, he has successfully taken out any instinctive decisions that could have entered into the process. Because he tries to be as subjective as possible when making his work,
Can you guys hear me okay?
he also does not judge the successfulness of a piece based on composition. I see this as a very unconventional approach to photography, and the reason I was drawn to it in thinking about material and its relationship to the image is because he takes out any possibility of artist-influenced interpretation regarding composition or aesthetic appeal. What's left is merely the outcome of a process that is all about the nature of analog color printing. The resulting work is sculptural, and the vibrancy and surfacing pattern created from his strict guidelines is an unexpected surprise in the work. Veshti initiates a dialogue between analog and digital processes when he appropriates his own mathematical process in the arena of the computer lab. When he was speaking of this work last year when he presented at one of Columbia's installments of the Lectures in Photography series, he mentioned that this work he created in the digital lab felt unresolved to him. Even if this work isn't resolved, it is significant that it was made. He does not negate neither analog nor digital processes. Rather, he engages with and connects the processes of analog and digital in a meticulous manner by working in both the domain of the darkroom and digital lab. In that same lecture he gave at Columbia, he articulated the process of art making in a broad manner when he said this: "Production is always an affirmative act." This statement is a powerful one because it is a reminder of that these productive actions of art making must take place if we are ever to fully understand the nature of digital materials. By experimenting in like ways in both the darkroom and digital lab, Veshti's photo objects invite us to contemplate the likenesses, differences, and inherent traits of these two very different technologies. The next artist I wrote about in my paper went about connecting analog and digital processes in a very different way. The Columbia graduate and now instructor Curtis Mann's work is very interested in both digital and traditional materials. By contemplating this work in the context of Veshti's photograms, it became apparent that they both grapple with the question of materiality. However, Mann's work has an outward approach that brings in a sort of socio-political dimension, whereas Veshti's work remains inward and purely non-pictorial to the point where he avoids conventional composition altogether. So, getting into the main body of work I explored, in his series Modifications, Mann begins his process by clicking through hundreds of images online, mainly from Flickr, news sites, and blogs. He is primarily interested in looking at vernacular images depicting areas of the world stricken with chaos and war. Oftentimes, he just types in the name of a city or a horrific event and then proceeds to order images by the hundreds. When the images arrive, he goes through them and picks one he will rephotograph with a film camera to make a C-print in the darkroom. The same process Veshti used with his analog photograms. Mann's process of reinventing the photographs are based on his own instinct to make sense of the excess of images he sees in the media and on photo sharing sites such as Flickr. Mann's way of dealing with these disorienting repercussions of the digital age take place in the arena of the darkroom with the more familiar materials of analog photography. He draws attention to the three-dimensional nature of the print by physically disintegrating certain areas of the photograph by applying a special varnish to areas he wants to preserve, and then he proceeds to bleach out unwanted areas. The bleached areas reveal the color emulsion of the paper, exposing the partially destroyed layers of emulsion of the print. He experimentally alters the new material further by crumpling, scratching, tearing, and drawing on the surface of the new object. With all of this overlapping of digital and analog material, an overwhelming awareness is manifested among the dugout scratch marks and exposed areas of the print. The already obscured appropriated imagery is made even more distant after he bleaches out much of the image, leaving the viewer with a heavily manipulated visual information describing scenes of general destruction. His work is a commentary on the homogeneity of visuals in the media and the scarcity of real information. In an experimental approach to discovering what the simulacra of war images from across the globe are teaching him, Mann begins to uncover the materiality of the digital world on an intimate level. The final image Mann ends up with comes from a dated process, yet the original images he appropriates are in the realm of the present. Mann's approach to this work reveals the sheer curiosity of what makes up the images seen on the computer. It is still unclear what the computer-based images are made of, and this fact adds to their illusion of realness. The work of Bashti and Mann are part of a constant thread that is being strung through the history of image making. And this history will uncover a familiarity of material and process while revealing the unyielding limitations within the mediums. The practitioners of contemporary photography are constantly discovering this unknown territory, and sometime in the next century, the materiality of the digital world will finally be collectively known. However, once the materiality of contemporary digital photography is more completely understood, we will already be integrated into the technologies of the future. Today's advancements will enter into the history books of photography, just as the processes put forth by Talbot, Daguerre, and other pioneering practitioners. While we can try to fully comprehend the history and development of process advancements in photography, when considering the rate at which technologies are progressing, it is unlikely that we will ever catch up with ourselves. Thanks.